Greetings and welcome to another edition. This is a late night edition. I guess we should classify this as an episode of The Vampire Stream. I'm your host, Rashid. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and we're waiting for Carl Zha to enter into the guest booth. He hit me up not too long ago and said, "Hey, let's do something." And so I was like, "Okay." So I sent them the link. Hopefully he'll be on and just as soon as he gets the link or whatever like that. So we'll go and we'll talk before he gets on. I noticed in the news that China is now, listen, we see the emergence of China as a not just an alternative, but a viable number one power. Just like with the Iranian Saudi Arabian issue, when they've been going through proxy wars and all this, and the Chinese stepped in, they were the big boys, you would say, the big boys of the geopolitical stage, as America and Great Britain and all of the other nations continue to foment unrest and division so that they can benefit. Weapon sales, if I get Arabia mad at Iran and I get Iran and mad at Arabia and I provoke Iran to strike at Arabia, and then I help Arabia finance terror and help Arabia do X, Y, and Z, then hey, my weapons manufacturers make money. And Carl is in the building. I'm going to bring him on the screen right now. So that was short. So let me bring him up right now.
Hello. Testing.
Yeah,
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we hear you.
Why is my headphone not working? Headphone.
We hear you.
No, I don't hear anything. I can't hear anything. Let me quit and come back in.
Okay. So he's having problems with his headphones. Now, again, the weapons manufacturers benefit big time. Do you know, I was looking at a report that said they made trillions upon trillions of dollars since 9/11, since George Bush, Dick Cheney, Paul Wolfowitz, and a whole host of the so-called neocons pushed this war on the world. This was not a war on terror. This was a war of terror to subjugate any nation that opposed American, British, and Western dictates. And listen, these people are so smart. They're dumb too. And yeah, I know they're dumb and they're smart. They were smart at doing this. When they implemented this strategy of war on terror, they demonized Muslims and Islam so that you can now, prior to that, you were not let's see, he's working. Let's see if I can bring him in. Hold on one second. I'll hold my thought and I'll bring him in, and I hope that everything is good. Carl, how's it going?
Hey, how are you, Rashid? I had some audio problems.
We heard you.
I couldn't hear because my computer audio was turned off. So I figured out I can hear you now. It's all good.
All right. So Carl, listen, here they are again, edit. There's a report coming out now. We know that China is pushing the bricks, the Belt and Road, and all of this stuff. And here's a report that just came out today. The article is this: fears of new global pandemic soar as new mutant strain of virus discovered in China.
Are we back in 2020? I mean, this is this is at the time when there's talking United States are going to reimpose mask rules because for fear of another COVID surge. It's like anytime they're talking about China, they're really talking about United States, right? It's like 100% projection. When they're talking about Chinese economy slowing down, what they're doing, they're distracting view from the domestic economy in United States. Everyone knows there's high inflation, the economy not doing so good, but don't worry about that, guys. Let's focus on China. China is not doing so well, it's so hot right now. Look at the youth unemployment numbers in China. You better wish you're not there, you're here. You are lucky. You're lucky to be here in the great United States. But they have been doing that for ages. I just saw another ridiculous article from Bloomberg today. It says, China is adding renewable energy too fast. It's adding too fast that its power grid couldn't handle it. It's like, of course, because they're actually adding new capacity. That just means they're going to expand their power grid later to handle the new power coming online. Whereas in the United States, we don't have to worry about that issue, because guess what? We don't add new power capacity. We'll just let people in Texas freeze their ass off once in a while. When there's a weather condition or storm or something. So we live in bizarro world, and now the mainstream media are all they're taking Onion's job, right? they're taking the Onion's job. There's no everything is satire now. Like a lot of times, if I saw something, a news clipping, I have to wonder, okay, is this real satire or is this real news? And a lot of times when I Google it, it's real. It's pretty incredible time we live in.
It's shameful, because even the UN stated that the one positive for the global economy was China's growth. China became the economic engine of the world, and it was the only country to post positive gains in the midst of this so-called virus thing that has been going on for the last 3 years. So how in the world, on one hand, can China ascend to the economic engine, the center of the global economy, and post the only gains economically, and yet their economy is falling apart and America is rebounding? How?
And when they're talking about Chinese economy slowdown, we're talking about they're going from like growth rate of like 6 or like 8 or 10% to maybe like 5 or 4%. Look at what the growth percentage of United States economy. US will wish it has 4% growth. Like everybody will be like, hallelujah, we're in the Goldilocks economy right now. We're growing with 4%. Things are going great. They can only wish for that kind of growth rate in the Western countries. But sorry for going on ranting. Go ahead, Rashid.
Hey, you're always welcome to rant. Hey, that's when we get the best material, when you just, and I mean, we get the best material, the most in-depth material. That's why I allow, when I have people on the show, I just allow them to be free, because most pundits, most hosts, they cut them off right at the time when they're about to share the most pertinent information. And I get sick of that, watching shows, and I'm like, this guy's rolling, he's rolling. Then they'll cut him off and go to something else. And you're like, are you not interested in what he was about to say? So, yeah. But there was something that we talked about that you wanted to talk about. Share it with the people, and let's address it, and let's go into it.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about Huawei, because this is the biggest story in China right now. And this happened in conjunction with the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, visiting China. She was on record of saying we need to limit China's technological advances. She was pressuring all the so-called U.S. allies, but really client states, to fall in line with the U.S. policy of carrying out the advanced semiconductor restriction to China. And when she was in China, she actually said, we will not budge from our national, quote unquote, national security issues, which means all this advanced semiconductor restriction will stay in place. But she's like, but we can still do business. There's other less sophisticated American goods that we like to sell to you. And she was literally filmed hawking American cosmetic goods in Beijing. So it's like, okay, you can have the cosmetics. Like, you can take some American cosmetics, but you're not getting our semiconductors. I'm sorry. So right to time with her visit in Beijing, with her rhetoric, Huawei released their new flagship phone, Mate. I don't know if it's called Mate or Mate 60 Pro. So this is quite a big breaking news, because the U.S. has their eyes on Huawei for a long time. I mean, Huawei, for people who are not familiar, Huawei got their start basically reverse engineer Cisco routers, and they were able to sell their product much cheaper than Cisco, so they gain a lot of market in the global south. But that issue has been settled because Cisco did take Huawei to court. That issue was settled back in 2000. But what really alarmed United States was not the origin, the original sin of copying Cisco. What really alarmed United States is Huawei is building all these telecom infrastructure
Yeah.
in the global
Yes.
South countries. I'm right now talking to you from Bali, Indonesia. Here, I'm talking on a Huawei built 4G network. That's one thing that China has done is like in Bali, for example, everybody have a smartphone. Even like little teenage girls have a smartphone because Chinese companies made it cheaper for people in the global South to afford smartphones. They made everything cheap and affordable. So like people in Southeast Asia, people in Africa, in South Asia, West Asia, everybody can afford a smartphone and they can get on the Huawei build 4G network to communicate with their friends. This is where Huawei get in trouble because U.S. accused Huawei of busting the Iran sanction when Huawei built out the telecom network in Iran. And this is why they had their proxy in Canada to arrest the daughter of Huawei founder, who is also the Huawei CFO, Meng Wanzhou. She's a daughter of the Huawei founder, and she's the CFO. And she was arrested, put under house arrest, and she was made to wear an ankle bracelet the whole time she was in Canada. I mean, could just imagine if China does that to a Western CEO. Can you imagine if China arrests Elon Musk and make him wear an ankle bracelet? People will be calling for war in the United States. But this is what U.S. did. This is what U.S. and Canada did, and then but what really alarmed United States is because Huawei rolled out their 5G. So now they are getting ahead. Huawei own a lot of patents on the 5G technology.
Right.
And that's when United States realized, oh, whoa, wait a minute. This is when some average Joe will say, oh, China, they steal everything from us. They stole 5G, so we don't have 5G in the United States anymore because Huawei stole it, right? So what really alarmed United States is because as the 5G is getting rolled out across the world, Huawei is getting a lot of contract. They're getting contract to build out 5G network in Britain, in Germany, in Australia. And this is why the U.S. intelligence community get alarmed because the three-letter agencies, they have a back door to all these telecom providers. This is how U.S. can, they can tap German Chancellor Angela Merkel, right? Like, because they have their back door everywhere. But if Huawei is allowed to build these telecom networks in Britain, in Germany, in Australia, they're not going to get that back door anymore. That's not acceptable. It's like, so suddenly they say, oh, this is a national security issue because for sure Chinese government is going to get a backdoor to Huawei, and then they're going to listen to all our friends, allies. So you have to stop what you're doing. You like they tell Britain, like, you don't know what you're doing. Like we know better than your national interest. We're telling you this is very dangerous. So it's actually forced countries like Britain to cancel their 5G contract with Huawei. And then they came out try to kill Huawei because Huawei is the flagship tech company in China. They are on the bleeding edge of the technology. One of the things is the Huawei require, because in the technology sector is a very diverse global supply chain. Back in the days when U.S. is talking up the spirits of the merits of free market, right? You're supposed to work according to that comparative advantage. You work on what's best, what you can produce more efficiently. So the global supply chain across the tech is very diverse. Like for example, the Huawei, a lot of the Huawei equipment contained a lot of the American, South Korean, Japanese technology at the time. They source, for example, their chipset from Qualcomm. Initially they would still have Qualcomm design their 5G chips, and then that design will be sent over to Taiwan to be actually manufactured by TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductors. Now, the Taiwan actually, they also require other external foreign technology. Taiwan Semiconductor, to make their chip, they get the machine called the EUV machine, the extreme ultraviolet lithography machine, that's produced by a Dutch company, ASML, in Netherlands. The machine basically use lasers to etch like very tiny transistors on these like, because right now we're talking about like Apple phone is going to use like 5 nanometers, 3 nanometer chips. It's not visible to naked eye, so they have very sophisticated machines to make them. Like I think I think one of those EUV machines from ASML cost like $14 million, just one unit of the machine. So United States, to look at this global supply chain, they realize the semiconductor is the weakest link in the China tech tree. So this is a choke point where we can choke off the Chinese tech growth. And so they first banned Qualcomm from selling their chips to China. And then they went one step further. They said any company in the world that uses U.S. technology, any kind of U.S. technology, whether software, hardware, then you are not allowed to do business with China, or you're not allowed to sell to Huawei. So all these companies, whether TSMC in Taiwan or the ASML in the Netherlands or the Japanese companies, South Korean company, they all require a little piece of U.S. technology somewhere. So that prevents them. This is basically U.S. it is placing a global ban on Huawei. So you can't do so. Huawei cannot get Qualcomm chips from U.S. Huawei, they designed their own chip, the Kirin chip, to replace the Qualcomm chip. But even after they design it, they still cannot send it over to Taiwan to have it manufactured, because U.S. say that's a no-no anymore. So Huawei tried to buy machine from the Dutch company ASML to make the chip themselves, and that's what U.S. tell Netherlands, no, you cannot sell your machine to China anymore. So it's like a very harsh, very strict ban and it was designed to hold China back for generations. That there's an article in New York Times recently. They basically said this is a war. This is an economic war they're waging on China for the past 5 years. In some effect, it did work, because it killed off the Huawei cell phone business.
Yeah.
So the official reason for United States for against Huawei is so-called national security. If you listen to Biden, he will say, "Oh, we are preventing China to use this U.S. technology to build missiles and nuclear weapon against us," which is completely bogus, because to the chip that goes into the missiles, they don't require 7 nanometers, 5 nanometer chip, because you need the 7 nanometer refer to the size. It's very small. You need very small chips to fit on your phone, right? On missile, there's no restriction on size. Right now, like 28 nanometer chip, which China can produce themselves, will just do fine on the ICBMs. And in fact, all the big missiles, they actually, it can't be too fine, to be too fragile. They have to be hardened against the radiation. So there's a different requirement for the military hardware. So China has no problem making semiconductors for their missiles and nuclear weapons. And this really, this whole ban is driven by, one is U.S. just want to stop China from progressing. But there's a former CEO, Eric Schmidt. He has contract with Pentagon with his own AI startup companies, because his idea is AI is going to be the future. AI is going to be able to use AI to fight wars, but we have to stop China because we need to stop China from producing the Skynet before we do. So Eric Schmidt is a big proponent of this tech war on China. But also his AI company is getting all these fat contracts from Pentagon, at the same time. And so it's all grift, man. And then for AI, for training AI, for example, the Chat GPT that everyone is familiar with, they do need the most advanced, fastest chip, and they require a lot of it, include like basically they use a NVIDIA's chip, GPU, to train like large models, and this is why US also banned NVIDIA sale to China. So really, it's the focus is on AI, but they also focus on killing Huawei. So Huawei, they're branch everywhere. They're continue to build out telecom network like 5G towers, because the 5G tower require like I said, you don't need 7 nanometer chip to for a 5G tower. The 28 nanometer chip will just do just fine. But that did kill off their handset business because because also and right now in cell phone you only have two platforms essentially. You have only Apple, you Apple on the Apple OS, or you're on Android, which is owned by Google. And US made Google to kick off to withdraw the Android support for Huawei. So Huawei developed their own OS system called the Harmony OS, right? So Huawei basically had to build everything from scratch themselves to make sure it's like 100% Chinese made, so to get around the US sanction. And the biggest news recently is that they actually pull it off. They came out their new phone. It's amazing. I saw a lot of the demo, and it was sold out fast. Like in the 5 days, they sold 1 million units of their new latest flagship phone. It cost maybe like $900. Which compared to like the top of the line Samsung and iPhone, it's still very much more affordable, and it's made with 100% Chinese made components. They actually did everybody in China, everybody in United States, as soon as they get their hands on the Mate 60 Pro, they start to take it down to go the cover to make sure it's 100% made in China. And now we have the verdict. It's 100% made in China. And how they were able to do it, Huawei already have a lot of the top level infrastructure. They already designed a Harmony OS to get around the Android, and they designed their own keyring chips, so they don't need to rely on Qualcomm anymore. The bottleneck is making small enough semiconductor that part was solved very recently, because so there are two type of machines that ASML, the Dutch company, makes. One is the top of the line EUV, the extreme ultraviolet lithography machine that makes right now the most advanced 3 nanometer and 5 nanometer chips in Taiwan. But they have an older machine called the DUV, which stands for the deep ultraviolet machine. It's not as efficient, but back in 2017, the engineers in TSMC on Taiwan, they figured out a way to use the older DUV machine to make 7 nanometer chips. It's not as efficient as the latest DUV machines, but Huawei has no choice. They don't have access to the DUV machine from Netherlands. But U.S. did not sanction a DUV machine because it's an older technology. So ASML from Netherlands can still export DUV machine to China until January 2024. So Huawei took all this, or not really Huawei, the Chinese semiconductor company called SMIC. They imported a whole lot of ASML DUV machine, hoarded them up, and the fact that Huawei is able to roll this off their assembly line and debut their phone That tells me they're not afraid of U.S. sanction even after 2024, because at the end of the year, China is coming out with their own indigenously designed DUV machine, so they won't need ASML anymore. They won't need the Dutch company anymore. So what U.S. sanction actually did, they killed off all the Western tech companies' business in China. Because
Mm-hmm.
ASML after 2024, they're not going to get any other order from China because one is sanctioned by US. But even if the US lifts sanctions, the Chinese company have to look. It's like, look, we can get cut off anytime. You are not a reliable suppliers. We
Mm-hmm.
have to rely on ourselves. And the semiconductor is so important that it goes into everything. They cannot depend on an unreliable supplier. So for all the Chinese tech companies are now in this together. It's do or die. See, but like
Yeah.
before the U.S. sanction, China has spent years trying to indigenize their own semiconductor manufacturer through SMIC, but they're always a couple generations behind. One reason is because Huawei. Why do Huawei need to go with local suppliers when they can get it cheaper and more
Mm-hmm.
reliable product from TSMC or from Qualcomm, right? The business always have the business reasons to go with the cheapest, most reliable source. But now the Western companies are not reliable anymore. This is by decree of the United States government. They show that they can cut it off anytime. So now the Chinese company have no choice but to go domestic. The thing is, technology today, the cliche was it's not rocket science, but even rocket science, China already mastered rocket science back in the 1960s. China, people don't realize is that China spent 400 billion plus dollars every year to import chips from overseas. So China spent more money importing chips than importing oil. And what U.S. sanction did is, now that hundreds of billions of dollars, instead of going to pay off Qualcomm, paying off TSMC, or paying off ASML, hundreds of $billions are now poured into research and development in China to make Chinese chips. And that's what happened. And that this is a great success. There's a lot of copium from the Western tech analysts to say, oh yeah, the 7 nanometer chip produced by DUV machine, that's like a couple generations ago. That's like so 2019. That's 5-year technology. Yeah, but before that, China didn't even have that. China before
Mm-hmm.
was 10, 15 years behind. And now they're only 5 years behind. And guess what? 5 years, they will catch up. And where are you going to go? And this is another thing. Right now, we're actually reaching the limit of Moore's law. So the Moore's law says every 6 months, you're going to pack more
Yeah.
semiconductor on a piece of silicon. But right now we're getting to 5 nanometers, 3 nanometer territory. I mean, we're approaching the limit of physics here. They are not going to get any smaller unless there's a huge technological breakthrough by using some kind of different material other than silicon. So while the TSMC and all these other companies are facing this challenge of overcoming this next barrier of going under 3 nanometers, China is still steadily catching up, and China is piling billions, tens of billions of dollars, and China have tens of thousands of engineers that graduate each year. They
Yep.
can it throw shit tons of money and people. You know what? It's just gonna happen. It's just gonna happen. I mean, like, we're just talking about the timeline here. Whether it's gonna happen, 5 years from now, or 7 years from now, it's gonna happen. And once that happens, guess what? China no longer needs United States. If we
Mm.
can pick everything,
Yeah. And I think he's frozen for a second. He'll come back in. Um, But I think that is one of the main things, everybody. When Carl freezes like that, he'll come back and he'll go out and he'll come back in. But I think that is one of the main things that has the West in an uproar, is because they see China is steadily ascending. And remember that this is a non-Western, non-white nation. And this is a no-no when it comes to the so-called rules-based international order. For China to catch up, think about this. They sanctioned China on parts for planes. China became an independent builder of planes, not just warplanes. Think about it. I want to bring this up as Carl comes back, gets ready to come back in the booth. They laughed at the Chinese endeavor to produce a fifth generation warplane. And when the U.S. Defense Secretary, what is it? Not Williams, but he was Defense Secretary under Bush and a Democrat too. He came as he went to visit Beijing. The Chinese flew their first fifth generation warplane overhead, which startled and stunned the United States. The Chinese build their own passenger planes now. Now, for a minute, let's just pretend that China was to do to the U.S. and the West what the West and the U.S. are trying to do to China. What if China sanctions Europe? Remember, China is their largest investor, and they're trying to bring high technology speed, high fast railway to that area. What if China cuts off trade? Or what if China sanctions the United States and stops shipping goods here? Remember that 93 to 95% of all goods on all the shelves in the stores in America are Chinese made. So what if China just so happened to say, you know what? I'm so tired of the United States using national security as a disguise for something more evil. And I'm tired of them always ragging on us and trying to stop our growth. What if China decides to say, you know what? Instead, I got it. Stop shipping all of those goods to the United States. How do you think that they would feel? But when you are in this mind of exceptionalism, the rules apply to everybody else but you. And that is the problem with America and the Western world. And I see Carl in the booth, and I'm going to bring him back in. Hopefully, there you go.
I need 5G right now so bad. It's very unfortunate because I live in the middle of the jungle, so I don't get fiber optics, and like my access to internet depend on the weather, and right now it looks like it's gonna rain. So I just when I was getting going, my internet conked out. I have to reset my modem, and so I heard a little bit of your monologue. That was great. That was great. And it's so right now. I mean, like, I think this is also why Huawei units were sold out, because the Chinese people, they understand what this means. What Huawei was put under by the U.S. sanctions. So they're buying Huawei partly because Huawei is a great phone, a great product, but also because of patriotism. They are buying Huawei because, like, we prefer Huawei than phone made with U.S. components right now. And this just shows that ultimately the U.S. sanction against China will be futile, and you'll come back and bite them in the ass too, because a lot of the U.S. tech companies are already crying. It's like, what are you doing to us? You're killing our China business. Now we're not going to get any business in China because, like the Chinese company not going to trust us as their suppliers. They cannot have to have their vital component parts to be liable to be choked off anytime just by a stupid decree from the White House. And that's going to happen. That's going to, like, U.S. wanted full spectrum dominance, but what they're going to end up with full Chinese spectrum dominance in tech after this is over, because once people still have this, they have some hubris. They think, oh, Chinese cannot innovate. Like Chinese, yes they can. I mean, when I came to United States in 1990, my dad came here as an exchange student in 1985. So he was in 1990. He was working as a postdoc in University of Illinois in Chicago. So I went to visit my dad's research lab. It's all Chinese people working there. It's all like so. I know how much the U.S. research institutions rely on the Chinese labor, and right now, U.S. is shooting itself in the foot by coming out with the so-called China Initiative, which they recently scrapped, but still goes on. The FBI goes on witch hunt to try to find spies, and they always target the ethnic Chinese scientists and researchers. That's forcing a lot of the Chinese researchers and scientists going back to China right now because they don't feel secure, no longer feel secure in the United States. Before, they may be complacent, they have a good life here, and now that's no longer an option, and that in turn is aiding the development in China. Like one of the U.S. sanctions is against U.S. citizens who work in those high-tech Chinese industries. So a lot of these, Chinese American top-level engineers, they just, okay, well, I just gave up my American citizenship. I'm Chinese now. I'm just Chinese. If you're gonna take away my job, I can always change my nationality. And so this is what's happening. This is so stupid because there's no reason that U.S. and China couldn't cooperate and have a much more fruitful a relationship. China is not the one that's starting this tech war. It's the U.S. that's want to keep China down. That's leading to this. And thankfully, I think this will all end in tears for the U.S. elite.
There can be you have to understand something. In the people who run America's mind, there cannot be an equal relationship, especially an equal relationship with a non-Western, non-white nation. How dare you think that you're on my level? How dare you believe that that you are entitled to have independent thought, independent views, independent policies? That is unacceptable to colonialism and the nations that have push colonialism around the globe. Like I was thinking, think about this. They are sanctioning China with a market of 1.4 billion people. Think about the revenue that these Western companies could make because China is modernizing. It has moved 850 million people from poverty into the middle class. That in itself is the size of the Western world's population. So now you have a market that you can benefit off of economically, but you're so headstrong in this hubris and in this arrogance that I have to dominate and dictate, that you're shooting not only yourself in the foot, but you're shooting yourself in the arm, the leg, the neck, and the eye to try to keep dominance. You are,
and the balls, and they're shooting themselves in the balls, and then $400 billion market. That's how much China was spending to import semiconductor chips. And they just say, "Oh yeah, we don't want that. We rather give up on all that money rather than you get ahead in technology." I mean, this is insane. This is why a lot of the U.S. companies right now they're crying uncle. They're saying, "What the hell are these people in White House thinking? They have no idea what the hell they're doing, and they're screwing us. They're screwing us because, these tech companies, they require a lot of capital investment into research, and then so sometimes their margins, to give up on such a big market as China." They say, "Oh no, that's only 25% of their export market." No, that's 25%. That 25% of their market share could just be their margin, their profit. You are just wiping out their whole profit right now, and you're gonna make them like barely subsistence level, barely to scrape by, and that's what they don't understand. Now before is essentially all this Chinese money importing American components are going to fund American research and development. Now that $400 billion that China used to import the chips, now they're
Mhm.
spending on their own domestic
Yes.
research and development. And you know, then we're seeing, this is what we're seeing right now. The result is coming out. And you know, they won't like it, but it's too bad. They will have to live with it.
And what's crazy is they're not just doing it to Russia. I mean, China. They're doing it to Russia, Iran, the BRICS nations, and the entire population of the planet Earth. And they're not stopping to think, hey, it hadn't worked here. It doesn't work over here. It hadn't worked over here. So why should I try it on the largest economy, purchasing power parity with the Chinese? Why should I do it with Russia when Russia has all of these natural minerals and resources and farm equipment and farm aid that it gives out to the world? Why are these people insane? That's
if it doesn't work, just do more, right?
Yeah.
If it didn't work last,
it's crazy, man. I mean, I guess because it seems like, as I often say, are there any adults in Washington? Because it seems like common sense would prevail, but it seems like these people don't have common sense. And while they're claiming to promote and protect the United States national security, they are putting it in the worst position ever by the policies that they continue to enact.
I mean, national security is just a total bogus. That's just like the total bogus claim, because U.S. is very secure. U.S. is surrounded by two oceans, Atlantic and Pacific. Nobody's coming over here, you know. Like nobody is coming here and take over Texas or Nevada. It's ridiculous to claim there's some kind of national security threat, posed by China or Russia. You know, right now, U.S. military base is over there. It's surrounding Russia and surrounding China. But they're saying that is why it's China and Russia that's threatening the so-called law-based international order. I mean, the law-based international order is really the American order. You know, it's the order that how we like to run things. But you know, this is it's just like I said, man. It's America is a child desperately needs a good spanking especially the elite, the American elite. They're so. I mean, have you seen the videos of the Mitch McDonald just freezing
Mitch
up
McConnell,
twice?
McConnell.
I mean,
Yes.
McConnell. I mean, can anybody? This is one of the most powerful U.S. politicians, right? I mean, it's just so obvious. These guys are just puppets. They just literally roll them out into the podium and have them talk and freeze, and then just roll them back. There's like the deep state is pulling the strings behind. I mean, nobody really think Biden is making policy. I mean, Biden half the time doesn't know where he is at any given time. It's but the problem is all these deep state people, all these people working in the intelligence agency or whatever, they think they know everything, but they don't. They like these U.S. tech companies said, these guys don't know what they're doing. You know, they have all they know is a Cold War. All they know that's the only thing they know how to do. So, and they think, oh, we won the Cold War 1.0. If we just go back to Cold War 2.0, you know, we'll just pull out the same script we had against Soviet Union. It's gonna work. Well, guess what? China is not Soviet Union. China is and now it's not just U.S. and China, like you say, it's U.S., China, Russia, Iran. I mean, you look at the Eurasian landmass. That's almost the majority of the Eurasian landmass right there. Mm-hmm. And now with BRICS plus 6, you know, it's like you know, like they already have projection by 2050. The expanded BRICS members going to make up more than 50% of the world's GDP. So, you know, that's the world we're hitting, and these people are still stuck in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm. You know, Mehdi, one of the channel members, says at the Red Pill Diaries, could BRICS sanction the U.S. or place tariffs on U.S. goods in the future? This is a point that I was making. Just picture the roles reversed, and I believe if you continue to poke the bear or poke the Chinese dragon, I believe that that would happen. You think about the precarious economic situation that America finds herself in while she's pushing and promoting war and trying to prevent people's ascension to power or to prominence. Her economy is collapsing. Her debt. The only way she gets by is through the gratuity of other nations buying her debt that she continues to print up. Now, China being one of the foremost buyers of that debt, holders of that debt, China being the number one trade partner with the United States, and 93 to 95% of all goods that are on all U.S. shelves come from China. If the United States keeps stoking tensions and poking tensions and provoking China with Chinese Taipei, that will become a reality because a part of war is economics. You see what America is doing. She's waging a tech war against China and also trying to bring down China's economy. What do you think China is going to do? Because they have a populace that they have to protect and ensure the security of. If you continue to poke, I believe that's where we're headed. What say you on that, Carl?
That's the thing. China actually do not want to cut ties with the United States. China just want to do business. China want to do business with anybody who wants to do business. Right now, it's the United States that's sanctioning itself. Like, well, all these, the Gina Raimondo's talk about she's pretending, this is only restriction on advanced semiconductors. It's only on tech. It's not a general decoupling of the economy. But guess what? Decoupling is already happening. It's they are pushing. They're doing all these and this is part of U.S. government orchestrated campaign. When they talk about Xinjiang issues, human rights in Xinjiang, they're claiming that somehow China is using slave labor to produce in Xinjiang cotton. That's how when they started this whole decoupling, they're forcing the Western companies to move their supply chain from China. And then what actually happened is during the last 5 years when U.S. had all these different sanctions on tariffs, is the U.S. imports still keep on going up with the rest of the world. But the direct import from China to United States is going down. But the boost in the import number to United States is coming from Vietnam, Mexico, etc. But then if you look at the Chinese trade numbers with Vietnam and Mexico, it's going way up. So they're shipping all the goods to Vietnam, to Mexico, slap a label, made in Vietnam, made in Mexico, then ship it off to the United States. And U.S. consumer end up paying a premium for the extra step. And then U.S. administration can claim we have a great success. But that does have repercussions because United States is one of the biggest food exporter to China. U.S. is the largest exporter of corn to China. China purchased about $5 billion worth of U.S. corn every year. But now China is realizing, look, if they can cut us off on semiconductors, they can cut us off from food. Food is a very vital supply. We don't want to be cut off like in any way. So what happened? What's China doing? China is pouring a lot of investment into infrastructure in Brazil to help Brazil to improve roads, to improve ports, and they're bringing different agricultural technology into Brazil. So China is decoupling from United States. I mean, the decoupling is happening. So China now is resourcing more of its corn from Brazil and also Argentina. Another reason Argentina is admitted into BRICS. Argentina export a lot of its agricultural commodities to China. So China is already, preparing to decouple from the United States because it's just simply because United States is not a trustworthy supplier of goods anymore. Because anytime U.S. government, some crazy politician get into the U.S. government, they can choke off that vital supply. Who can put their life, nobody can trust U.S. politicians with their lives. So China is already making plans. And this is why the BRICS is going to become increasingly more important. Who needs United States? BRICS can produce their own oil, their own food. They can produce everything,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
And the decoupling is showing, and here is something. This shows you how China moves the dial a little bit on the economic and political stage. As China started to buy more of Brazil's corn, Brazil overtook the United States as the largest exporter of corn this year. So that shows you the madness in the policies of the politicians are destroying America's economy and its standing globally. Um,
Yes.
One of our Putin's shirt is talking about the bombing of the port, the Black City. Let's see, it says Putin bombed 2 ports in the Black Sea on the eve of Putin Erdogan meeting. What do you have any comments on that issue?
I mean, right now it's basically it's becoming obvious to everyone the Ukraine offensive is turning into a fiasco. There's no hope of winning on the conventional war front. So they're going to turn increasingly into terrorism, like sabotaging of public infrastructures. Using drones, because U.S. can provide the intelligence and technology to Ukraine to enable them to do this kind of one-off attacks. Is basically to sow uncertainty, but at the end of the day, that won't change much, man. Like it may make some news headlines for like a couple of days, but that's not going to fundamentally change the front line in the war. And I just show increasing desperation. Um, and also at this time, Ukraine probably would want to drag NATO into the war even deeper, like as in direct involvement. But I don't think NATO is ready for that. They can't even produce enough. They can't even produce enough artillery shells for Ukraine. I mean, like, one of our videos we did. I cut a segment and posted on my YouTube channel, and there was one commenter say like, "Oh, but U.S. just gonna produce everything. The U.S. don't need China. U.S. can just start producing domestically." I'm like, look, you can't even produce enough artillery shells for Ukraine with $1 trillion in military budget. You can't even produce conventional artillery shells for Ukraine. That is the state of the industrial capacity right now. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? People imbibe too much of this Hollywood propaganda, man. And like people just need to need to see the real world, lift up the blinders. And right now, I'm so glad I'm talking to you. It's just sometimes talking with these brainwashed people it makes you furious.
And it's taxing on your soul too, because it
Yes.
takes so much out of you trying to explain to them the reality of the situation, but they become so accustomed to the propaganda that it is hard to get them out of the condition that they're in, and sometimes it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
I think about what they say about America will produce everything. How can you, when all of your manufacturing capacity have been exported? You can do stuff on a small scale, but I just want the people to realize something. Russia's military industrial complex, which is dwarfed, and I mean dwarfed by China's military industrial complex. Russia is out producing not just Ukraine and America, but Russia by itself is out producing the whole of the Western world with weapons, armaments, artillery, radars, warships, warplanes, everything. And now look, that is just a small peep into China's manufacturing capacity. And so I don't understand how they believe, the people in Washington believe that getting involved in a direct confrontation with Russia would be good for business. And I definitely don't see how they think it'll be good for business for China, because China has the largest air force in the world. I mean, largest navy in the world, the largest army in the world. And they said within a year, it'll have the largest air force in the world. Plus, it's the largest economy in the world, the largest lender, the largest manufacturer, the largest trade partner to most of the world. How can you win against when all of the odds are stacked against you and there are insurmountable odds? And I just don't get how the people don't see this.
It's they imbibe too much of their own propaganda, right? I mean, like they think, oh, China is gonna collapse. China is gonna collapse anytime now. But it's just it's it's infuriating. It's infuriating to watch from the sidelines, and um, but this is like the thing that you said earlier, how U.S. elite is kind of screwing the Americans,
Mhm.
because they don't care about the average Americans, man. They just care about lining their own pockets. For the average American, for them are just like little pawns on the chessboard. You know, they can expendable. They're just bodies, just like everybody else. And yeah, man, it's it's. I don't know how long the American people can continue to put up with all this crap. You know, all these people in the now they're it's like because I look across a political landscape. There's no, they're all the same. They're all the same. It's they're just sponsored by different factions in the in the military industrial complex. It's
Yeah.
it's you either have the Democrats who want war with Russia, or you have Republican who want war with China. United States is like a country that doesn't know, it's not comfortable with just peace. You know, U.S. has always been at war. I've been in United States since 1990. I really don't remember a long extended period of time when the United States is not at war. Uh, but I mean, I guess what they're trying to do right now, because they figure out, okay, we're not producing anything anymore in United States except weapons. So that's the
Mhm.
only way we have to do military Keynesianism. You know, rather than build bridges, ports, railroad, let's just build more weapon platform. Like we, I remember like back in 2008. So 2008 is when China was starting to build their high-speed railway. You know, they're just starting to build their first high-speed rail from Beijing to Tianjin for the Beijing Olympics in 2008. At that time, I was in Los Angeles. I was dating a Japanese girl who was working the Japanese consulate in LA. And her job was to like show the Japanese businessmen who around. But these Japanese businessmen came to California specifically to talk about the deal to build the California high speed rail project. That was 2008. Now China covered the entire country with high speed rail. I don't know what the status with the California high speed rail project is. I mean, this is state of build back America, because everything is it's just it just not fun. It's not functional. I'm sorry. It's just this is the best way I can say. It's just not working. It's dysfunctional. It's like we have, and it's not even a high speed. So the high speed rail originally was supposed to go from San Francisco to LA, which makes sense. Connect to metropolitan area. Now they're connecting to what? They're building from like the middle of nowhere to middle of nowhere. Like, what are you thinking? I mean, like, like one place that would make
Yeah.
sense would be
Yeah.
from like LA to Vegas, right? Like everybody, that traffic, that
Mhm.
road is horrible. People would much rather take the high speed rail, I think, rather than flying and driving. But it's not happening. It's not happening. It's like people keep on throwing all these excuses like, oh, US is just too big. We don't need high speed rail. I mean, that's just bogus. It's because we can't do it. We can't do it. I mean, like we're not gonna get high speed rail on. I'm in Indonesia. The China build high speed rail between Jakarta and Bandung is gonna come online in a couple of months and put into operation. So Indonesia is gonna have its high speed rail before United States. And this is a
Don't forget,
state of things.
don't forget, there's some high speed rails in Africa that China built too.
Yes, yes. I mean, like now everybody's getting better infrastructure than United States, and the U.S. and people in U.S. are still so brainwashed that they call people elsewhere shithole country. I mean, time to look at inside, look at yourself. Time to look at inside United States.
You know, going back to something when they were talking about how the United States often use this as a political ploy when they say that the Chinese stole the jobs. And in reality, this is what took place. Most people are not aware of this. The United States economy had stalled and it was about to collapse. They needed some, they didn't have the gold. Charles de Gaulle called them on their spending, and Richard Nixon said, well, the US dollar is as good as gold. And Charles de Gaulle said, well, then give us gold then. And Richard Nixon took the world off the gold standard. And so he looked for somewhere else. So he went to Saudi Arabia and promised to build up Arabia if they were to peg the oil sales to dollars and they would recycle them. But they also needed a big economy to open up. And man, they looked at China and they said, they went over there and, hey, we got a deal for you. We'll move manufacturing over here. And it wasn't like for China, this was a win-win deal. China's economy would boom. They would get an influx of technology, but the United States economy would be allowed to grow and stay afloat because of the new opportunities and new customers that they had. I don't understand why they leave this stuff out when they're talking about this.
Yeah. Huawei did not come to Midwest in U.S. and steal a plant and take it back to China. No, the U.S. industrialists, they figure out they can make more money by shifting production to China. And they not just China. They first did that to Asia back in like 60s, 70s. They shifted to places like Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and then later when China opened up, then they shifted the production over there. And this is why they think they just treat everybody as commodities. Like they treat human beings as you're replaceable. Everybody's replaceable. We'll just go to the cheapest, most cheap labor. But what happened in the last 40 years? Now they're stuck. They're stuck in China because now the Chinese manufacturing is not just about bodies anymore. They build a whole ecosystem where they have all the parts suppliers, they have all the transport hubs, they have all they have the infrastructure, they have the power grids, they have the ports, they have the railroad, they have the roads, and it's really hard to replicate that whole. You have to build that whole ecosystem. If you want to replicate another China, and that's going to take decades. That's why all these attempts of trying to, Apple try to shift the production to India and all that, it's not working out right now because it's not this is manufacturing in 2023. It's not manufacturing in 1973, the one thing mind-boggling to me is the U.S. refused to invest in its own human capital, because I know why, because they think they can loot bodies from the rest of the world. It's like, okay, well, we'll just let the Indian Chinese engineers to come to our shore. We'll still be fine. We don't need to train our children. We don't need to teach our children. And now they're screwing all the Chinese engineers and scientists. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, years of being told to learn code. No, exactly. This is a problem with this is why they want you to they want to tell you that China steal our job rather than our capitalist class betray the working class Americans.
Yes.
And shifted the production overseas. And this is the financial elite is responsible for like 90% of the problem in this country, but they don't want you to look there because all the media is owned by the same financial elite in the United States. So it's a lot easier to point blame to the Chinese, to the immigrants, anybody but the owners of Wall Street journals, or Washington Post, Jeff Bezos. And so, so because they are the ones who are profiting from this new arrangement, and to the detriment of everybody else. And yeah, something need to change, man. Something need to change. I'm ready for a French Revolution moment.
I doubt if it happens here. There will be revolution, but not in the way that that will help the empire to escape the situation. That I think that she's going down the rabbit hole now. There's no way for her to rebound. Think about this. She is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. She has debt that if you put China's economy and everybody else's economy together, they still could not pull her out of the debt situation that she's in. So if you're facing math tells us this, that it's an impossibility for her to get out of the economic situation that she's in. I'm not talking about what I believe. I'm saying there's a math equation that states, okay, she took on this amount of debt. She's constantly taking on this amount of debt. Her production is nil to zilch. Everything is imploding. Everything from employment to the housing market to this to. I mean, how can you pull yourself out of a debt situation if you continue to spend more money and if you continue with these arrogant policies that alienate the very nations that keep your economy afloat?
Well, that's why they think the rest of the world have no choice. I think the rest of the world have no choice but to recycle their saving into US dollars. That's why it's the same arrogance at work. But the thing is, US actually has a great position. It has, like I say, it has two oceans as moat. Its homeland is very secure. It has abundant resources. It's the world's third largest population. So you have all the elements for success, if you only to focus on internal development. But our government is telling us, no, the best we can do is war. The best we can do is war. It's very infuriating because there's no because they really just don't care. Because when the financial elite, they can make their money elsewhere in the world. Why do they need to care about you? Because they just see everybody as a cog in the wheel. They can just literally pick and swap and replace. And this is why man, this system have to go. United States, I think, will be fine, but the system is rotten. That the system has to go.
They don't look at it like this. Okay, let us look at Libya. Prior to Muammar Gaddafi taking power, Libya was the poorest country in the world. It had the lowest literacy rate. I mean, hardly anybody. I think it was 2% or 3% of the population could read. After that, after implementing policies that prioritized education, Libya, 40 years after that, I'm talking about before the NATO murder and massacre of Gaddafi and Libya, Libya became the most prosperous nation on the Mediterranean. Now let's go to today. China has put huge amounts of resources into education to make its population not just a workforce, but a skillful force, plus a knowledgeable force. And at one time, its economy ranked up under India's economy. And it was one of the poorest countries in the world. And now look at it. It is the largest economy in the world. The politicians should take note of these little gems that have been dropped through history, but instead they have an insatiable appetite for war. They believe that war trumps everything, and people don't realize that the proper education gives the right guidance. And if you have the right guidance, you can build the proper students, which become your scientists, your lawyers, your engineers, your politicians, your doctors. But instead, the United States is devolving because it's defunding everything that is vital and crucial for a republic or for a nation to exist, and they think everything is okay so long as I can promote war.
Yeah, it's screwed up, man. This is totally screwed up, and right now the U.S. is just it, it, it's I don't know. I just the elite have to go, man. We need to roll out the guillotines. I mean, like at this point, I gave up on the elite themselves to see the light and reform. I mean that happened before. That happened during the New Deal when coming off after the Gilded Age and the age of robber barons and then they finally realized that look, if we don't shape up, there's going to be revolution on our hands. There's already Bolshevik revolution in Russia. We don't want that to happen here. So that's when they actually made concessions to the working class, and that enable kind of the post-war prosperity for a little bit up to 1970s. But still, I mean, even back then, even in the 50s, 60s, they made the concession to the white working class. It was still, screw the black Americans, so and other colored folks, but like right now they don't even do that. They don't even do that. Now they just like getting so greedy because they feel that they have the whole global labor pool to exploit the global resources. But now what happened is the rest of the world is saying like we don't want to be exploited by you anymore. We now have alternative, and
Yeah.
but our elite, their mindset is still stuck in the 20th century. They still think like the world cannot live without them. It's like no, you are parasites. Nobody needs freaking parasites to sucking out the lifeblood out of them. You guys are not the one that's working, actually producing anything. Um,
I actually
yeah,
believe that it's a little more. I think it's the elite, but I believe it's the entire system. Because you think of this, when you have these people running for office, and you have these people with all of these grandiose ideas and those campaign slogans, I'm going to do this, and they'll condemn everybody else in office. They should be doing this. And as soon as they get elected, they don't change the system changes them. And the system changes their
yeah,
policies and their priorities. So there has to be a uprootment of the entire system and a
yeah.
building process of something totally new, because this is not a viable system. There is no way that being parasitic economically, politically, culturally, through your military arms is a viable way to progress as a society. There's no possibility of that.
No, that's totally true. I mean, look at Bill Clinton. I mean, he came from a working class, single mom family, but he turned as soon as he joins the establishment. Now he's part of the establishment. I mean, you are right. You are totally right. The system changes people, so the system must change. I mean, like it's but I think this is why the BRICS, like people or even people in the West are now seeing BRICS as a fresh breath, a breath of fresh air, because now finally there's an alternative to the kind of the same war-led imperial system that's been going on for decades. So we'll see. We'll see. Well, I mean, this is only the beginning, and like you say, like China has China and India was the world's largest economy for centuries, if not
Yeah.
millennium. And it's only in the last 200, 300 years they were brought down by colonialism and imperialism and become impoverished. So right now what we're seeing is actually a return to the old to the old world order, where the center of global commerce and economy is in the East. The people in the U.S. establishment just need to accept that fact. They need to look at Britain. Britain lost its empire after World War II. but the British people still live much better off than they were before 1945. And US average Joes in America can still live better off, in a globalized world where US is no longer number one. If we just trade with everybody, work with our own labor using what resources United States has, US can still be a prosperous society. It doesn't have to be war all the time and just war and screw the poor. I mean, that's a program, but yeah, we have to change the system
Well,
somehow.
a wise man said back in the 70s, he said, led by China, it will be the Asiatic nations that will lay America low and remove her off her economic and political perch. In the 70s, he foresaw this up to today. And we are living in the manifestation of what he said. And I'm like, wow. Light years ahead, he saw what others couldn't see because China was not at that level at that time, but he saw the potential in China. And he said that it would be the Asiatic nations led by China that will lay America low, economically, politically, militarily. And we are watching that right now in real time. I know
Yeah.
I kept you a long time. We're going to do this again. But
Yeah, for sure.
but
I mean,
anything,
that what you reminded me actually was the Robert McNamara's 1965 Vietnam War memo to Johnson. He actually, in 1965, he actually said there's a potential that China will put together a coalition of Asian nations that that will bind them against us, our interests. This is why we need to be in Korea, why we need to send ground troops to Vietnam. So they were trying to prevent the rise of China and rise of Asia from very, very long ago. And they're still trying to do it.
And that is one reason why they're trying to keep that island chain, what they call an island chain defense, to prevent China's breakout capacity militarily. And so the guy who said what I said to you guys, he talked about that also, but he said that the Chinese knew these things and they were patient and they would work on them and they would overcome every block that is impeding their growth. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, to the very letter and spirit, we're watching this stuff happen right now.
Yes, we live in historical times. I mean, I'm very in a way, I mean, I'm outraged by the shit show going on in the U.S., but I'm also happy I can bear witness to this historical moment.
Yeah. And this is a great shift. This is a new paradigm where, for the first time in memory, that you'll see power, economics, and politics shift from Western domination to the East. And it's a very beautiful time to be alive, to watch these things and to acknowledge them happening before you. In closing, do you have anything to say to the people out here who are watching?
Well, I just thank you guys for watching, for sticking with us. This is has been very therapeutic for me, for myself, to talk to Rashid, because you get it. And we'll have to do this more often. This is a good time.
Thank you, Carl. I'll send you the link in just a few minutes.
Yeah, awesome. Great.
All right, be blessed, my brother. Everybody, thank you for joining us on another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. Remember, do good not just because somebody's watching you. Do good because it's the right thing to do. Treat people as you would like for them to treat you. And remember that God is always watching. So you may get away with it in front of the average person, but you'll never get away with it or over with it with God. I love you if you love truth, but know that the true and living God, he will always love you better. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. And remember to join us. We may have a live stream tomorrow. I don't know for sure, but we may. I'll schedule it if we do, afternoon. Also, Larry Johnson will be with us Thursday. So join us at 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 Eastern Time. Thank you for your time. It has been a pleasure. I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you for joining the chat. My guy Mehdi, my guy Putin Shirt, and everybody else who joined us in the chat. You kick butt, and you're just the biggest part of this show as I am. Thank you so much for everybody. And hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Hit the like button, subscribe, and share. On that note, I go out. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Everybody, I love you. Deuces. I'm out of here.